I'm Mr. Hayes. I am proud to be up here today, mainly because in a few minutes I won't have to be up here. But this is a civil rights symposium. I think all of you have been talking about civil rights. In the past few years, I know I've had the privilege, I know Mr. Flugum has had the privilege to have Mr. Haas come in and speak to our classes individually. And as a department, we said, well, can we expand this because this is such an important story? So I approached Mr. Haas earlier in the spring about possibly, turning this, what you see in front of you. And he graciously accepted, volunteered some of his friends without them knowing it, and here we are today. One of the things that Mr. Haas in communications with him, and I know the other speakers up here, is that he's talked about the quality of school that Apple Valley High School is, and the quality of students that we have, and I certainly echo those sentiments. And so we are proud and privileged to have these four members of the community, Minneapolis, Twin Cities community, at Apple Valley High School right now to share some of their experiences. With us today, first of all, is Lee Rainey. Lee is, I'm just going to kind of skip some of the highlights. Some of the stuff is going on behind you as well, but some of the accomplishments, I have 4 pages of accomplishments, and I cut some things. He currently works for Thrivent Financial. He worked at Target as a human resources consultant for 30 years. He was in telecommunications. He was the director of sales internet service provider solutions. He's served as director of assessment center manager college relations at US West. He is served on numerous boards of directors, including the president of the UNI, University of Northern Iowa Alumni Association. He is a board of directors on Urban Ventures. Al Nunez is vice president of Jocelyn Sports Sales, former collegiate basketball star, drafted by the Phoenix Suns, graduated from the University of Minnesota where he was all Big Ten. He is named to the NCAA Executive Committee for Final Four tournament, worked in 12 years in sales management positions with Pillsbury, is taught and coached at Minneapolis Central High School. He's a member of Omicron Boule. I know I'm probably not pronouncing that correct. As a professional men's organization dedicated to civic and philanthropic activities. He's received the National Scroll of Courage Award, which is presented to a top former African-American athlete who has best exemplified what giving back to the community means. George Robinson has worked with the following companies as training and sales marketing, basically director, just a list: Ford, Philip Morris, Sendent, Bayer, Rydell, The Power of Small seminar with MIT. He's also worked with Boeing, Cisco, Monsanto, Merck, and Coke in the US, Asia, Europe, and South America. President of the KID Group, with that worked as General Motors, Miller, General Mills, and Target. He is Vice President Sales and Marketing of the Pecos River Learning Center, developed partnerships with DuPont, Bayer, Ford, Astra Merck, and has fostered $17 million in training and consulting with their program, and worked for Controlled Data as well. He also serves as the board of a Turning Point at Missouri Valley College, and he has been a member of the board of advisors for the Urban Venture Leadership Foundation. Mr. Haas, who many of you know, was a business management consultant and sales and marketing professional for over 40 years. He worked internationally and domestically for such companies as Procter & Gamble, 3M, Novartis Pharmaceuticals. He's been manager and senior consultant for Reliability Management Group. He's been educational consultant, cultural liaison, substitute teacher, as many of you know. He's worked with Lakeville area public schools and closed the gap, the achievement gap between different racial groups while his work at Lakeville. Attended University of Minnesota, all Big Ten football player, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't really want to talk too much more because we want to get to them talking. The format of this, so first of all, let's welcome them. The format is going to be is each gentleman is going to share probably 10 to 15 minutes of their personal narrative And then at the conclusion of that, we will open up for question and answer. We'll have a couple mics around the audience. I know in speaking with them this morning, they're all very excited about the questions that hopefully are generated by this symposium, by this talk. And so please, as you are hearing these gentlemen share their story, if questions are percolating, save those somewhere and then come back to them at the end. And we're very excited. And so first of all, it is my pleasure to introduce Lee Rainey.
Thank you very much. Test 1, 2. Can you hear me? Is it working? Yes, no? Oh, okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's a great opportunity to talk to you a little bit about my life history during the 50s and the 60s. And for me, and when you talk about the 50s and 60s to you guys, I'm sure you think, man, those are the dark ages, you know? You can hardly, can't even fathom being this old and living during that time frame. But for me, the 50s and the 60s were kind of the best of times and the worst of times. And so I want to take an opportunity to share just a few minutes, a little bit about my life story growing up in the South, moving to the North, and some of my experiences in school during the Civil Rights era. Now, I hope you guys brought your lunches because I have 16 pages here. And I'm not serious, I'm not going to go through 16 pages. But I'll just take a few minutes to talk to you about some significant events in my life. Let me start with the fact that I was born in Ruleville, Mississippi. And for the longest time, I couldn't even find that on the map. In the last 10 years, it finally has hit a spot on the map that I could find, but it's in what they call the Delta area down in the southern part of Mississippi. We were, my parents were sharecroppers. Anybody here know what a sharecropper is? Oh, great, right on. Because as far as I'm concerned, being a sharecropper is the next closest thing to being a slave. For you that are unfamiliar with the term, basically my parents had a plot of land that they rent or use from the landowner. They planted a crop, mostly cotton and peanuts, and they picked those crops, and 50% of that crop stayed with them. The other 50% was given to the landlord, or in this case we call him Mr. Charlie. I think his last name was, of all things, White. But the interesting thing is my parents, we didn't have tractors. We had two mules, Scott and Skinny. One was fat, the other one was skinny. And my dad plowed, literally with a hand plow, the soil to be able to plant the cotton and the peanuts and all that kind of stuff. One of the big events for me in the South at that time was that once they had finished picking the cotton, on the weekends they would take it to the cotton gin. So we'd load all the cotton in a wagon, pull it to the cotton gin where they sorted it out so it could be prepared to be linen. And one of the most exciting events was that we got a chance to have orange crush pop, luncheon meat, and white bread. Now, white bread was significant because my mom had cornbread and biscuits. But when we could buy white bread and have a sandwich and orange crush, that was just amazing to us. But about the 1950s, there was a great migration of black folks from what is called Gamal. If you studied your American history, that's Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And this great migration was precipitated by some of the things that were going on in the United States at that time. In 1954, we had a Supreme Court ruling called Brown versus Board of Education, which basically said separate but equal facilities were unconstitutional. And this caused some disruption among the white folks, as you can imagine. So we, in 1950, started looking towards moving further towards the north and leaving the agricultural rural South and moving to the more industrial north. And for you that know your American history, basically most of us black folks followed the Illinois Central Railroad, going up along the Mississippi, coming on up from Mississippi up through Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, and Michigan. And most of the black folks stopped off at those ports along the way. And you have any idea why they stopped there? For work and for opportunities to improve their lifestyle? Do you know what made it real easy for them to do that? Yep, you got it. Basically, there were jobs. There were jobs for people who were basically uneducated and they could find jobs in the packing house or in the railroad. So that's how we began that migration from the north to the south, seeking a better way of life. We ended up in St. Louis, East St. Louis, Missouri, and from there we moved to Chicago. And the interesting thing about Chicago is that we moved into the large towers and apartments on the south side. And the thing that was interesting to me about that is, what I remember is that in my opinion, we moved the plantations from the south to the cities and had all of us black folks in one location. I remember how smelly the halls were, and going to school for me in Chicago was not a matter of education, but survival. Just learning how to survive, because each day I think I got in more fights than I learned anything. We stayed there for about 6 months, and then we moved to Waterloo, Iowa, where I basically grew up. And in Waterloo, we moved into a little addition outside of Waterloo called Maywood. We moved into a little one-room house with a kitchen and a shed. And in that one-room house, there were 4 of us. Mom and Dad and my older sister slept in one room. My brother and I slept in the kitchen with a cot. And the interesting thing there about our bathroom was outside. It was an outhouse. And I was afraid to go to the bathroom, quite honestly. I always thought I was going to fall through. We got our water from a pump. So we pumped our water and brought it in. And it was a very intimate, if you will, lifestyle for us. But when my mother was going to have another child, we wanted to move from Maywood to the Waterloo proper. The challenge came when she started looking for property, because they didn't want to work with us. They didn't want to work with black folks to help them find a different place to live, because in the Maywood addition, we had mostly all black people. But Mom finally found a realtor that was willing to help her move into the inner part of Waterloo, Iowa. We found a nice home, only 2 bedrooms. And at that time, we were the first black family on the block. As soon as we moved in 5 years later, 6 years later, guess what happened? There were more black folks, and all the white folks moved out. So we were the first family there. Small home, 2 bedrooms. My brothers and I lived in an attic. In the summertime, it was hot. In the wintertime, it was cold. But it was the best that we knew. But I first began to experience discrimination right up front when we started looking for a home in that area. From that point, I moved into the 2nd grade. And I had a lot of challenges, because when we went to school, it was a one-room school. And it was K through 12. We had a school teacher. I moved up to Waterloo, and I was in the 2nd grade. I didn't pass. I failed. That was a significant event for me, because I was unable to keep up with the rest of the kids in my family. But one thing it did for me, it said, I'm going to become the best that I can be. I'm going to eliminate all this, the black talk that I had from the South, and try to assimilate myself into the white culture. Going to school in Waterloo was not too bad, because simply it allowed us to, we were integrated. What I didn't realize the challenges were that as I got ready to go to college, and I went in to see my high school counselor and said, I want to go into college. He says, you shouldn't go to college. Go to the factory and work in John Deere, or go to work for Raft Packing Company, which is a meat packing company there. So he really discouraged me from going on to college. But I decided I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it anyway. So those are some of the earliest challenges that we faced, just getting assimilated into the northern part of the city. Some of the biggest challenges for me during the time that we were in college, and since I'm a history major, I have a lot of dates. I'm not going to get into all of those, but it was significant in 1964 when we passed the Civil Rights Law. And basically what that Civil Rights Law did was the ability to say, hey, separate but equal facilities was a no-go in the United States, and that it gave black folks the right to be able to go to the same bathroom as white folks, same schools, no longer had to sit in the back of the bus. And many of the benefits that we see as black folks and white folks today started with that Civil Rights Act. But one of the most significant events other than that was when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. I can remember this day and this time on campus where the riots and things developed. We had sit-ins in our schools demonstrating the fact that, civil rights was not moving as fast as we thought it was going to. There were still challenges ahead of us, and there was a lot of dissension on campus. You know, those that were pro-nonviolent, those were pro more the Stokely Carmichael Black Power movement, and that created a lot of dissension with us right there, even on our own campus. So I think I'm going to stop there, and because there's a lot other that I can talk about, the changes in the culture as far as the music, R&B came into being, the Temptations of Four Tops. These were the best times for us. But prior to those days, these folks couldn't be on a label. You can have pictures on the label. They had to stay hidden, because white folks didn't want to be listening to black music, and they didn't realize the folks that were singing it were black. So those were some of the better times that occurred then. Okay.
I'm sure all of you know Trey Jones. Would you tell him that his great uncle was here looking for him because he owes me a bet that he lost and he hasn't paid it? So when you see him, you tell him that for me. I'm excited to be here. Lee has done an outstanding job of laying out how basically all of us experience a little bit of what he's talked about. But Lee, the outhouse part, you should have stayed in Chicago. I was in Chicago. I didn't have the outhouse. But you know, one of the things I'd like for you to do is take a journey with me. We're going to get in a time machine, and I want to go back and highlight with you some of the civil rights movement that meant a lot to me, or it started me thinking about it. So let's hop in the time machine, and I want you to kind of visualize what I'm talking about. And I know most of you talked about a lot of this, so hopefully it'll be familiar. I go all the way back to 1957. The important date for that was the Arkansas 9. And what's important about that is to understand the Arkansas 9. This was 9 kids. Now, certainly there were more than 9 African-American kids in Arkansas, or in that part of Arkansas. But the reason it was only 9 is because the black families that worked in the community, where they worked, their bosses told them if their kids came to school under that plan, they would lose their job. So the 9 kids that boarded that bus were either kids that from their parents were either ministers, doctors, lawyers, or someone that lived in the black community and depended on the black community to support their businesses. Now, let's think about that. This is 9 kids in junior high school. Put yourself there with me. These kids board a bus, go to a school, and they can't get in. Adults, white adults and kids, with baseball bats, bamming on the bus, saying, "Nigger, go home. Go home. We don't want you in this school." They had to turn that bus around. But fortunately, our government said, "Nah, that's not going to work. If we have to send the police to allow those kids to go to school, that's what we will do." So what happened? The next day they go back, they got police protection. They had to walk through an escort line of police on both sides, people spitting at them, but they went to school. They broke the barrier. Let's move on. Let's move on to 1963. University of Alabama. 2 people trying to integrate the University of Alabama, a young man and a young female. They were turned away. Our president at that time, Kennedy, said, no, that's not going to work. If I have to send the National Guard or federalize the National Guard in Alabama to make it possible for them to get into school. And Governor Wallace was standing at the door. He was blocking the way. National Guard said, move. Move or we will move you. These people will be allowed to go to the University of Alabama. Now think about this. These are people, Alabama is a state-ran university. Everybody's paying taxes, but they couldn't attend that school. That's the kind of thing that we grew up in. I want to take one more quick trip back to Arkansas, because there's something in Arkansas around 1964 that probably is little known. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's when Central High School in Little Rock, it's called Little Rock 12. The significance of that for me is that an individual who Ray and I went to school with was one of those individuals. And the stories she would tell us, it's unimaginable. Her life has been scarred with that. Betty McCoy. She married my brother. They had a daughter. I'll tell you this story. They had a daughter. Betty was very resentful of the way she was treated in Arkansas. Guess what? Her daughter married a white gentleman from Arkansas. Betty couldn't deal with that. It took her a long time to deal with that. The interesting thing, his family couldn't deal with it either. He was disowned, lost everything, his inheritance. He was from a pretty wealthy family. He had a brother and a sister. His sister died in a car accident. Only one heir left was him. His mother and father finally came to grips with him and his 4 children. And it was unbelievable to see how they cried, that they missed all those early years of those kids growing up. It's interesting twists in life. Let's move on a little bit. Stay with me now. We're going to 1966. Big impact on me. Smokey Carmichael. I'm sure you guys have talked about that, and I think it's SNCC organization. That was the nonviolent, student nonviolent organization. But that was the forerunner of the Black Power movement. That was a forerunner. What switched that movement was a rally in Detroit where H. Rap Brown, if you haven't heard of H. Rap Brown, mark that, look him up. Interesting fellow, because he was the one that turned the Black Power movement basically into an eye for an eye and self-defense. We're not going to let you sick dogs on us anymore. Martin Luther King's movement, fine, y'all go ahead and deal with that, but I can't handle it. I'm not going to have anybody throw water on me. And that movement picked up real big. 1967, another gentleman came onto the scene, Malcolm X. Picked up the same type of movement. Malcolm X became a member of the Black Muslim organization, and they actually were really wanting separate but equals, moving back to Africa in some cases. But again, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We're not going to allow anyone to come into our neighborhoods and disrupt us. Another organization that came into effect around that time, 1969, is very dear to my heart, the Black Panther movement. I say it's very dear to me because one of my dearest friends that I grew up with, his name was Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther movement. Fred Hampton was literally assassinated. There was 500 bullet shots into his apartment. Nothing coming out. 500 rounds that they counted that the police shot into that room. When he was asleep at night, never had a chance. There was a suit filed in 1972, I believe. It wasn't resolved until 1982, and his family was paid $1.8 million from the city of Chicago for what happened to Fred. That's kind of a backdrop of what the civil rights movement has meant to me and the highlights of it. But I think one of the things that's important for all of us to understand, I still think that this is the best country in the world to live in. That's why so many immigrants come here. We have set the stage. We can do better. The question is, have we done better? When you look at what transpired during the early 50s, 60s, and 70s, here we are, 2017. Are we better off now? It's a big question. I hope some of you might ask that. Now, have I benefited? Yes, I have. I've benefited quite well from this, on the backs and shoulders of those that worked in that civil rights movement. I've been the first of a lot of things here in Minnesota. I was the second African American hired as a basketball coach in the state of Minnesota. I was the first African American hired at the University of Minnesota on the staff as a basketball assistant. I was the first district manager at the Pillsbury Company, the first national product sales manager at the Pillsbury Company. I was the first director of sales and community basketball operations for the Minnesota Timberwolves when they got started. So there's been a lot of firsts coming along because of the way things were set. So have I benefited? Yes. And I hope that before we leave here today, that we can help you guys understand and answer some questions for you. Thank you. I'll turn it over to George.
Again, my name's George Robinson. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually honored and humbled to be here, and thank you, Al, for giving us the invitation. You know, I had a list of dates and events that I was going to share with you, but I want to tell you, Lee and Al have covered those topics amazingly well. So I think what I'm going to do is change what I was going to say and share a story with you. I have to pay tribute to the people that came before me. Martin Luther King. If he wasn't, I would not be today. Rosa Parks. No Rosa Parks, I would not be here today. John Lewis, Medgar Evers, and many more that you've studied in your history classes. I would not be where I am today. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for affirmative action. I sat on the backs of those that came before me. Equal employment opportunity provided all the opportunities for me to move forward in major corporations. That's amazing. But I want to say to you here today, some of you 14, 15 years old probably. How many are 14, 15 years old, 16 years old? Raise your hands if you are. That's outstanding. I say that for this reason. When I was your age, there were 4 or 5 major events that woke me up to the civil rights movement. I was a freshman in 1963. Martin Luther King got arrested in a Birmingham jail. The letter from a Birmingham jail came out, and that was just strictly, the moral duty to disobey unjust laws. That was key to me, and I got that when I was your age. That happened in April 16th of 1963. In May, Another thing happened that was a wake-up call for me, and that was when Eugene Bull Connor used the fire hoses and the police to disrupt protesters. That was amazing to me. That opened up the civil rights movement to the entire world. It was all over TV. It was a wake-up call. I was a freshman. I was your age. It really began to say, you know something, I better get serious about school, because this world is really crazy right now. And it's crazy right now, if you will. June the 12th of that same year, Medgar Evers died in his front yard. That was amazing to me. This all happened when I was your age in 1963. In August of 1963, 200 to 250,000 people came to Washington, D.C. I wished I could have went. I was your age. I couldn't get there. That was amazing that many people, not just black people, white people, Hispanic people, all kinds of people showed up. It moved me. And that same year, September 15th, 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed. 4 little girls died, and others as well. Those were amazing wake-up calls to me. I didn't feel that I even had a future at that point, but I knew that I had to get an education. I knew that I had to study. I was a freshman. I was an athlete, so things were a little bit easier for me. I was an athlete, and Bruce Springsteen played his guitar. You know, I still get to go to his concerts for free, thank God, because he's my classmate. But anyway, the thing I'm trying to say to you is my wake-up call was the same age that you are right now. And I had a general course in college, a general course. And I had a couple of coaches come to me and said, you know what, son? You see what's going on in the world today? You need to go to college. So I got out of my general curriculum and got into a college preparatory curriculum. And I covered math, geometry, algebra, trig. I took all of that, and I had to really work hard because I wasn't brilliant. It came hard for me, but it changed my life. Those events in 1963 told me that I had to be better to make it, and that was pretty much my wake-up call. Also, that same year in November, and you all know what happened there, November 22nd, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. That was an amazing year. That was my wake-up call. I got to get my act together and move forward. Had a great high school career. But the other thing that came to me is when I got ready to go to college in 1967. Amazing things were happening. There were riots in 1967. Everybody that I knew, or my friends, they had athletic scholarships and they were getting ready to go off to college in 1967. I only had 2 football scholarship offers. Delaware State University. Let me put it this way. I only had 1 at that time, and it was Delaware State. Let's be very honest. I talked to the coaches. They said, let me tell you something, son. We'll accept you, but we accept everybody from Delaware before we accept other folks. And so you had to come second semester. I knew what life would be like if everyone else went off to college, to their respective colleges and universities, and I had to wait. I don't know what would have happened to me if I had to wait. So I took that as a no, and I went back home. And the reason I took it as a no, because I wanted to go somewhere in August and September. I made up my mind college wasn't for me. I'm going to join the service, and I would have ended up Vietnam, and I'll tell you, I would have been on the Vietnam War Memorial today, because I have at least 10 friends that are there today, and I pay my respects to them. But when I got home that day, I said to myself, I'm going to join the Army. I went to Newark, New Jersey in July of 1967. You can look this date up. The city, to get my physical to join the Army, the city was blockaded because of the riots in July of 1967. Martin Luther King had come out against the Vietnam War. Things were kind of going not very well for him at that time, and I couldn't get in to join the service. Went back home, got a letter from a gentleman by the name of Volley Ashford from Missouri Valley College. He said, if you want a scholarship, son, you need to catch the first thing smoking. I'm scared. I'm a northerner. I've never been in the South. And I'm thinking that Missouri is south of the Mason-Dixon line. And I could have been a hunting accident, or I could have got hung. Because there were stories of people getting their ears cut off and all kinds of things back then. So you know something, I took that, and I took that offer, and I went to Missouri. It was the most unbelievable, scary thing that I ever did, to drive 1,500 miles on a bus to go to college. First generation to ever go to college. It was scary, but it was college or Vietnam, and I chose to go to college. And when I got there, this school sets out in the middle of nowhere. I was scared, but I knew I had to get an education. I knew that that was important. That was the only way that I was going to be successful. Got in the bus, 200 miles, had a couple pair of pants in the trunk. My mother fixed a box of chicken. The chicken was gone before I left New Jersey. Black families make chicken. I just want to let y'all know that. You know. But it was amazing. The chicken was gone before I left New Jersey. I got there, got to St. Louis, switched buses, came to a place called the Junction outside of my college, 10 miles in the middle of nowhere, and I'm south of the Mason-Dixon line. This man, and I don't know what he was, came to pick me up in a red, raggedy truck. I was scared to death. I said, oh God, why did I come out here? Got in that truck, drove 10 miles to the college, took me to his house, bought me a steak dinner, and took me to Young Hall. What's amazing about that story is it could have went either way for me, but I made up my mind when I was your age that I was going to take a risk. So you got to look at change and challenge as an opportunity rather than a threat. Because if you look at change as a threat, you're going to be going into the future kicking and screaming. You have to make up your mind to go to college today. You have to make up your mind now that you're going there and start setting the plans. I did when I was your age. You know, this whole thing called the civil rights movement gave many of us opportunities. My whole career is based on that. And I've had many jobs and owned many businesses. But it ain't over yet. And we need you all to carry on this whole movement. You know, we've got work to do. As long as 12% of this population is African American and 44% of the prison population is African American, you know we have work to do. When we're undereducated and over-policed, we got work to do. More work has to be done. As long as women get paid 75% of what men get, we got work to do. When the LGBT community is being treated poorly, we've got more work to do. As long as indigenous people are struggling, we still have work to do. As long as we ignore global warming, we got work to do. As long as the middle class is continuing to disappear, we got work to do. As long as there's an income gap, we've got work to do. Now is the time to make Black Lives Matter. Now is the time to close the income gap. Now is the time to treat poor people fairly. Now is the time to address global warming, and now is the time to address the disappearing middle class. We need you all, and thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Apple Valley. Good morning. I want everybody to stand up real quick. Stand up. Stand up. Stretch your legs out. Stretch out. Okay, you can sit back down now. You can tell I teach classes sometimes. Statistics say, data says that the first couple of hours in the morning, high school students are still asleep. It's hard to educate high schoolers in the first couple of hours in the morning. You know, little kids When they wake up, they're awake. They're ready to go. But they start school an hour later than high schoolers. And somehow, to me, it seems like they should flip-flop that. But that's another story. I want to start out by saying, good morning. Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1949 to Reverend and Mrs. James Hawes Sr. I'd like to tell you a story. This is the story about a boy who was born at home in a 3-room shack without electricity, running water, or indoor bathroom facilities. This boy was delivered by his 2 oldest sisters of his mother. He was born at home. He was the youngest of 9 children. In fact, this boy's oldest sibling had graduated from college, an Ivy League school, Cornell University, with a PhD before he was born. His father was a college-educated man, but he pretended to be functionally illiterate, lacking the ability to read or write so that he could get work. He couldn't appear to be smarter than a white man, or he wouldn't get work. And this boy's father had 9 children and a wife to take care of. This boy grew up in the Jim Crow segregated South, and he lived that way until he left for college. For those of you who don't know who Jim Crow was a character in a minstrel show that buffooned black people. He was jet black, he had big red lips. He was often portrayed by a white person, but it was buffoonery. This lad grew up in the segregated South, as I said, where everything, and I mean everything, was racially segregated. Schools, churches, playgrounds, parks, museums, movie theaters, hotels, restaurants, modes of transportation. I mean everything. It was apartheid in America. Those of you who have studied South Africa know when I mention apartheid, it was a way of separating the races, to keep you apart, okay? This boy, when his folks would take him for back-to-school shopping, would have to cut out designs and templates because this boy was never allowed to try on clothing. He could not do it because if this boy tried on a shirt, he had to buy it because no white people would buy that shirt. And so, carefully, his mom and his sisters laid out templates. They drew cardboard around his feet to put inside shoes to make sure that the shoes would fit. They took a tape measure and they measured his inseam to make sure that that shirt would fit, or those pants. They took the inseams off of those pants to make sure those pants would fit. Because once again, if this boy tried on those clothing, he had to buy them because no whites would ever buy them. This boy was one of the most celebrated Negro athletes of his time, with multiple scholarship offers, including 3 Ivy League offers, full scholarships. He was a nerd. He was a nerd. He studied hard. He made straight A's when he was in school. He had been preached at by a preacher father. He was a PK, a preacher's kid, about how important education was, how it was the bulwark and the foundation for everything. And a B was unacceptable in this boy's household. He had to bring home A's. He did. However, when he applied for admission to his own state university, he was denied admissions to his state university, even though he had Ivy League scholarships in hand. He was denied admission to his own state university. He was one of the first Negroes in his state to be declared a scholar athlete. Prior to that, no Negro athlete had ever been declared a scholar athlete in that state. These were dangerous times. That boy didn't have very many options. He knew he either had to go to college or go to the war in Vietnam. There was no other option. If he did not go on to college, he knew that he would be drafted into the Army and most likely sent to Vietnam and most likely perish there. Well, in 1964, they passed the Civil Rights Act, but it changed very little for this boy. In fact, the act itself made things worse. Can you imagine? Here was an act that was designed to do good, and it made things worse because it produced hard feelings among whites who had the power, who had the control of jobs. It made them angry. And so the situation was worse. When the act was passed, guess what happened? They started closing parks and playgrounds and swimming pools and establishing all-white academies, and defiantly acted against businesses and other institutions that tried to provide equal opportunity for people of color. The passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965 had almost the same negative impact. The establishment of illegal poll taxes, literacy tests, holding up a jar of jelly beans and saying, how many jelly beans in this jar? If you can't tell me exactly the number of jelly beans that are in this jar, you can't vote. Harassment by law enforcement, creation of white citizens councils, and terrorist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan ran rampant. It was dangerous. So this boy determined that the only option he had was to leave home and seek opportunity where there was perhaps a better chance for him to survive. It's interesting, this boy chose the University of Minnesota because of its football team and the opportunities for Negroes not found anywhere else in the country. The Golden Gophers were the first football team in America to start a Negro at quarterback. Do you know how significant an event that was? See, if you're a Negro, you have to think, you have to be smart, you have to think on your feet, you have to be heady. And we know Negroes aren't like that. They're not smart, they're not heady, they can't think on their feet. But Sandy Stevens said, you're a damn lie. And he went on to prove it, because not only did he lead the Golden Gophers to the National Football Championship, but he was named first team All-American. And guess what? He took the Gophers to the last 2 Rose Bowl games that the Gophers have gone to. This was front page news in Negro papers across America. Across America. A colored boy is leading the Golden Gophers. This wasn't just local news, this was national news, international news. When this boy got to the University of Minnesota, he was one of about 50 African American athletes in attendance out of 55,000 students. How many of you who are Caucasian can imagine yourself going to a historically black college or universities and not only surviving, but to flourishing there. Not surviving, but flourishing. This is what that boy had to do. It was one of the loneliest periods in this boy's life. He was so homesick for all of the things that were familiar to him: food, culture, acceptance. He had to develop a mantra. That does not kill you, makes you stronger. And he lived with that. As he matriculated, slowly but surely, America started to turn. America came to be more accepted of people of colors, and barriers slowly started to come down. It is ironic that in the sports world, where some of these barriers came down, the gridiron, the basketball court, like Mr. Nunes, when white teams that had never integrated start playing against interracial teams, then it started to change. One of the keystone games was when the University of Alabama, rich in storied tradition and being one of the great football powerhouses, played the University of Southern California, 1972, I believe. And Alabama had come in ranked number 1, and SC trashed them. And in fact, they put in the second team and the third team, and they still kept running up the score. The next day, the buzz in the local barber shops and the coffee shops were, we better get us some of them colored boys if we want to compete. It changed America. Slowly but surely. Historically, black colleges and universities like Howard University, Morehouse College, Fisk University, Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, Bethune-Cookman University, Meharry Medical School, Spelman College, to name just a few, started losing some of their best and brightest students because the students were going to places where they were being accepted. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. But you know, had it not been for those historically black colleges and universities, I would not be standing here because they trained my brothers and sisters. Well, I just tipped you off. I'm talking about me. Those schools taught, excuse me, taught my brothers and sisters. They educated us. But when there was no other opportunity to be educated. Even though I did not attend a historically black college or university, I know my older brothers and sisters did. And the first check that I write out for charity every year is to the United Negro College Fund. Because without them, I wouldn't be standing here. I've tried to highlight what those two significant acts did, but mostly it was hard work by people like this, showing up and doing the work. It breaks my heart when I see students not achieving, when I see students who have talent, have the ability to do better, and you don't. It breaks my heart. It kills me. I don't know what I can do to challenge you to be better, but you need to be. You don't need to play around with this stuff. You need to come here and talk to people and ask questions and become educated people. Have a skill, develop a skill set that nobody can ever take from you. Where you can travel to any place in this country, any place in this world, and still be employable, and still have the ability to take care of yourself and your loved ones. Don't do it. Excuse me. Until then, I want to thank each one of you for listening. I want you to get back to your classroom after this presentation and excel, because we're standing on the shoulders of giants like Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Thurgood Marshall, Booker T. Washington, Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. Benjamin Mays, Asa Philip Randolph, Fannie Lou Hamer, one of my favorites, Roy Wilkins, General Benjamin Oliver Davis, Harold Washington, and so many others who came before us, who without them, you and I would not be sitting in this auditorium today. So thank you for listening. Blessings on each one of you. My wife keeps telling me, she said, "You are failing retirement." She said, "Honey, you're supposed to be retiring. What is dragging you out of here at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to that school?" And I said, "It's nothing but love. I love you guys. That's the reason I come here." Thank you.
All right. First of all, thank you for the amazing testimony and narrative. We now want to open up for questions and answers. You provide the questions, they'll provide the answers, and they might question you, and you have to provide the answers. And if you don't know the answer, your teacher is not Mr. Hayes, it's Mr. Flugum. Okay. So, anyone have a question?
So this is directed towards all of you, and I'm just like, your stories are so touching and inspiring, and thank you for coming out here. But out of all the barriers that were like created for Black people during that time, and all the adversities and challenges, what do you guys think is the greatest that you've had to overcome?
You can take that one at a time.
The greatest barrier for me to overcome is the fact that just to be accepted for who I am. What always amazed me that I thought I did a pretty good job of assimilating into the white culture. I learned to speak the language, I dressed to dress, I went to school, I got a BA, I got an MA, But every time I walk into a room of my peers, whether it was in college or in corporate America, the first thing they see is Black. They don't see me as Lee Rainey, but they see me as a Black individual in the midst of all those other white folks. And only after they get to know me to realize that I am a professional, I am trying to do the best I can for me and my family and for others, do they start to look at me as a person. So that barrier has been a big challenge to overcome in the past, and it still is that same barrier there today. I can't walk in among a group of my peers before they think of me, first of all, as a Black person, and later on they learn to know of me as Lee Rainey.
For me, it was a little different. I think what happened for me was when I understood a little more about what discrimination was all about. It's not about you getting food stamps and getting help from the federal government. You become a threat to people when you have the education and can compete for the larger and more important jobs in this community. That's when you really began to face what challenges that racism brings. Because, we're all told to go to college and get an education and the world's going to change for you. I got news for you. That doesn't always work that way. Today, it's not necessarily what you know, but who you know. You need to know something, yes. You need to be educated, yes. But this system that we all live in today, we need to help each other. And as you get higher and higher in this system and compete for those higher and tougher jobs, that's when it became evident for me. When I was a sales rep, I didn't have any problems. When I became a district manager, I started to have some problems. When I became a regional manager, boy, I started having a lot of problems. Well, maybe Al can't do this, he can't do that. Maybe we shouldn't move him along as fast. And then when I became a national sales manager, oh man, how can we give him this national sales manager's job? Well, when I became a vice president, then I could do what I wanted to do. But that's the name of the game.
It's a very, very interesting question, because I could answer that question on many different levels, but I think the biggest concern that I had, or the problem that I had, was just trying to break the glass ceiling in the corporate world. You could only go so far when that ceiling just held you back, even if you had the skills to move forward, which thank you in some ways, because that's why I became an entrepreneur and started a couple of businesses myself and still work for myself today. I just refused to continue to fight that battle, because you got to a place in corporations where they just wouldn't move you up. You could have all the skills, but they didn't know what to do with you at a certain point. When everyone else was getting promoted and you were performing better than them and they got promoted, you just felt that wasn't fair. I guess the other thing was, I'm in an interracial marriage. My wife passed away a couple years ago, and my kids, are half black and half Irish. I call them black Irish. And I was hoping by the time that they grew up that racism would be gone. It's not. It's not gone. It's still with us. And I was hoping that the battle would be a little bit easier for them. It is, but not as much as I expected. Breaking the glass ceiling and overcoming this thing called racism, which is alive. And today, it's more alive than it's probably ever been before, because there's so much going on that's negative that are drawing the races apart today.
Thank you, George. The thing that amazes me, and I'll get to your question, is how these gentlemen are pouring out their heart, their emotions to you. I don't know if you can see them from a distance, but I see tears in their eyes as they recount some of these painful episodes that have happened in their lives. And I know where they're coming from because they've happened in mine. But I think my biggest obstacle was fear. The fear of failure. So much was riding on my success. And I didn't want to fail. I had come from a family where they were very, very successful. But nobody had ever done what I had done, and that was to leave and go 1,000 miles away from home to attend college and to go into a totally different environment. I think I mentioned in my piece that I went from a culture that was 100% African American. Everybody in my world was black. Teachers, administrators, custodians, school board, everybody was black. And then I went into a world where everybody was white. And I had been cautioned by some of my teachers, well-meaning people, you have no business at all going up there and attempting to compete with those white children because they're smarter than you. They're more talented than you. They've had access to more resources than you've had. So it was that fear that drove me. And the only way that I could overcome that fear was to get into the arena and compete.
Other questions?
I just want to thank you for coming and speaking to us today. This has been incredible. My question kind of piggybacks off of what Halima just asked, but I was wondering, in your personal lives or in America as a whole, when do you think things got better, or has that not happened yet?
Wow, that's tough. I thought things had gotten better when Dr. Martin Luther King was marching and we passed the Civil Rights Act and separate but equal and all that stuff was declared unconstitutional. But one of the saddest days of my life was when Martin Luther King was assassinated, because he seemed to be that element of hope for us that said, yes, our world is changing, we got a leader that's helping us. And it seemed to me like we made a step backwards. And as I pointed out earlier, many of us believe that it was the FBI, our own federal government, that helped in the system of assassinating him, along with elements like the KKK. So that was really a down period of time for me. And although I went on to college and graduated and got a successful career in business, and I thought, okay, I've moved into a middle class status. We live out there with middle class white folks and black folks. But I soon realized that the problem wasn't over. It was still there as he pointed out, when my little kids came home from school and they had been called the N-word, had been picked on. This was in 1972. I thought, their parents went to school with us. They lived during the civil rights era. They're learning this stuff at home. So I knew then that it wasn't over. And just one last illustration. I have a 12-year-old granddaughter, and when she was about 8 years old, she came home from school and said, "Grandma, why do white folks hate black kids?" This was less than 3 years ago. So is it better? I think, yeah, there's been a great opportunity for some of us, and there's a lot of hope with you folks. When I look out here and see 40% of you that are diverse because you've grown up together, there's hope that there will be change. I thought we'd be much further ahead than we are today, but when I look at our current leadership and some things we're doing to progress, I question whether we are really better off than we were, or it's just passive acceptance. So I pray and hope that you, at the best, is yet to come through you and through my grandkids.
I agree. That is a tough question, but I'm going to kind of try to tackle this a little different way. I think we have gotten better. If we hadn't, we wouldn't be here on this panel. We wouldn't have been able to get the jobs that we've gotten. You wouldn't have a black assistant principal. You all wouldn't be sitting here together in this school. So, and from that perspective, yes, we have gotten better. I think what has happened is that we now live in a world economy. We didn't live in that for a long time. Our middle class thrived in this country. That's what made us grow. That's what made us come together, the middle class. The middle class supported this country. The middle class is dwindling in this country. The jobs that most blue-collar, middle-class families had are no longer here. They're overseas. We live in a capitalistic society that has changed how we look at things and what's important. So I think all of that has brought all of us back to a point of nervousness. Whites, blacks, who's taking our jobs? We're nervous. We're trying to figure our way into the next generation of jobs and people. What I challenge you folks is to be political, to read, to listen to what's going on. Because I honestly believe the help that we need to get us on the right track is not the president. We need term limits in Congress, people. That's what we need. We need to get some of those old people out of there and start moving and helping us change this country before it's too late.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if I could say much more than that, but I think you all, I think things are better. They have gotten better. I think we're at a low right now. And I think you all can make a difference and make that better. When I look in this room and I see the diversity in this room, it gives me hope that things are going to get better. But I asked each and every one of you to take a look and question your own biases. The discrimination, most of the shootings, most of the Ferguson stuff, most of the shootings that are taking place are based on unconscious bias. biases that people grow up with that they never really get a chance to test. How your parents taught you, your environment, how you were raised, gives us all some biases. What we need to do today to make things better is to take a look at those unconscious biases, recognize them, and put them up against objective reality and say that kind of thinking doesn't work anymore, and you can make things better. That's what we do. I hate to bring up a problem without coming up with a solution. I think that's one of the solutions that could help things get better. Okay.
Last year, I sat in this very auditorium, and I listened to a couple of your staff members give an impression on what this building was. And if you could summarize what this school and this school community was in one word, what would it be? And the term was ghetto. It was ghetto. But when I look at you, I see the exact opposite of it. You are a beautiful sea of what I hope this country is going to look like one day. I want to, I look at you and my heart just pounds because there is so much potential in this room. But it starts with you. It's not up to us. We old men. We are.
Speak for yourself.
They're in denial, okay? But it starts with you getting outside of your little posse, your little group, and meeting someone who is totally different than you, does not share the same skin color, does not share the same culture, does not eat the foods that you eat, does not practice the same politics that you practice. But you ask those people, what's up? What's up? You okay? This your school? And if they say negative, then you need to get to the bottom of it. Because every student at this school should take ownership of this. And you know what? It radiates from here. You go home and you tell your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, hey, guess what? I go to Apple Valley High School, one of the most progressive and diverse schools in America. That's where it starts.
What was like the scariest moment for you, like growing up and seeing everything that you saw? What was like the biggest like story that you have to share, like the scariest moment where you really saw the civil rights issues?
That's a question that I would say, what continue to be the scariest moments for me? Growing up in Iowa, I was a part of a rock band, and we were out of the University of Northern Iowa, and there were 3 black guys and 5 white guys. And as long as we played in the big cities, it was great. But then when we went to little towns like Whittier, Iowa, and Belle Plaine, Iowa, where before we got in town, the police would stop us and accuse us of having stolen a car of the guy that we were riding with. We had to wait until they called his father to verify the car belonged to him. Or once we had finished playing, afraid of those people that were outside that were calling us names or whatever, and they had all kinds of names for us for being rock musicians back in those days. Those are scary moments. What's scary for me is to, even today, is to drive into downtown Edina and be driving in a luxury car and being afraid that the police is going to pull me over for some trivial offense that I may or may not have occurred. Those are still deep fears that I experience today. So it's not like it was back then in the 50s and 60s. I still experience a lot of those right now, but those are 2 that I encounter all the time. You just never get away from it, which is unfortunate.
I would like to share 2 situations. One, when I was playing basketball in college, in junior college in Iowa. your state.
Yes, my home state.
We were in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and we were recruited to play on this team. And that the team, as a matter of fact, just to give you a little background, that team is the greatest basketball team ever assembled at Fort Dodge, Iowa. We had 4 African Americans that came in there. One was 6'10", one was 7 feet, 6'7", and then I was a short guy. But we had a tremendous year. But when we first got there, we were at the coach's house, and we noticed a bright light, and we went out, and there was a cross that was burning on the coach's lawn. Being from Chicago, I had never seen that. I was scared. I was ready to go home. It turned out that, we had a tremendous 2 years there. But the second situation that Lee kind of mentioned, I'd like to share this with you. I lived in Edina. And I came home one day from work. Again, I was a national product manager at Pillsbury. And I wanted to do some painting on my house. So I had some rough clothes on, and obviously I had some paint on me, and I had been painting that morning, and I wanted to go to the convenience store across the park to get something to eat. So I proceeded walking through the park and getting onto the sidewalk and walking to the convenience store. Police car pulls up alongside of me, says, hey, where you going? I looked at him and I said, going to the store. Said, well, do you have a driver's license? I stopped. Now, listen, I'm in my 40s. I stopped and I said, a driver's license? I'm not driving anything, I'm walking. And his next comment was, so you're a smart guy, huh? You want to get smart? I said, no, but I do want to know your badge number. Oh, you want to know my badge number, huh? Yeah. I reached in my pocket. I gave him my license. He looked at the name on the license, on my driver's license, and this is exactly what the guy said that was sitting next to him, the cop that was running it. He said, oh shit, we've screwed up. I lived right next door to the mayor. I said, okay, I got your badge number. Let's see what the mayor has to say about this. It's interesting how profiling exists, and you may not think it does, but it exists. That police force, from that point on, I could be jogging down the street in Edina, and the police would pull up alongside of me. Hey, Al, how you doing? They knew exactly where I lived. They knew exactly what I was doing. So yeah, those are the two scary things for me.
Wow. Al. I did not know that. Wow. I personally haven't had a whole lot of experiences with that, but the experiences I have had continue to happen, and that's driving while being black. It just does not work today, and you constantly worry and have to warn your kids what to do when you get stopped by the police. Some of them have implicit bias, some of them have unconscious bias, but that could have them pull the trigger if you don't know what you're doing and you don't put your hands in the right place. And that can happen to anyone. That scares me. And it always has, even back then when I was young. But I recently, just to let you know that this is still alive in other situations, I recently had an experience that scared the daylights out of me. I was making a speech. I do about 70 speeches a year, and I traveled to like at least 15 different countries a year, making speeches on leadership and management and unconscious bias and all kinds of things. But I was in Dover, Delaware, making a speech 2 days before the election. And of course, I didn't think, and by the way, I don't mean to get political on you, but I didn't think Hillary Clinton would get beaten. I really didn't. Until I took this trip. I used the GPS to take me to the site to make the speech in Dover, Delaware, from Baltimore Airport. Got a cheap airfare, right? Saving the client money. When I came back, I put the same address to get back to the airport in the GPS. Instead of taking me on the freeway, it took me through the back country of Delaware and Maryland. An hour and a half ride in the back country. And there were deserted towns, there were pickup trucks and people with guns in their trucks, and every 4 miles there was a Trump-Pence sign. I'm not taking sides or anything like that, but I felt someone was going to stop me or I was going to see the Klan. This is just before the election, and every 2 miles there was a Trump-Pence sign. And I felt like I was going to die. My heart thought it was going to come out of my chest. And I could not believe that I could feel this way, or I could be so out of touch with what was going on politically in this country. And when I experienced that, I got back and I voted. But I said to myself, Hillary's not going to win this election. So racism is still alive.
One of the things that the four of us have done here is we've each given our children the talk, quote unquote, the talk, especially to the male children. And what I mean by that, the expectation that my son, who is a 43-year-old man now, has the way he has to approach life and the way he has to approach a police stop or anything else. I call it police judo. The things that he has to do in order to survive, okay? How he has to position his hands on the dashboard, how he has to seek permission to retrieve his license and registration, how he cannot make any sudden move that might intimidate or cause fear to that police officer. And all of this has come out because of what happened to me. I had the barrel of a .357 Magnum pistol put on my temple, well, not my temple, my occipital bone back here by a Georgia State trooper. I was going to play a football game. And I had been stopped about 3 times within a 20-mile stretch. And the 4th time, I was just irate, I was angry. So I jumped out of the car and he was staring right down the .357 Magnum. And he said, "Nigga, get on the ground now." And so I got on the ground spread eagle, and he came over with this great big pistol, and he put it right on the back of my head right here. And he said, "If you move, I'm going to blow your head off." And I didn't move. And he wanted to know why I jumped out of that car, if I meant him some harm. And I told him, I said, "I'm coming down to your fair state to play a football game." And he said, "Can you verify that?" And he made us open up the trunk, and there, of course, there was football gear in there, and there was our luggage and stuff. There was a couple of teammates. We're integrating the Blue Gray Football Classic in Montgomery, Alabama. But ultimately, he had to let us go. I had to go and change my diaper because I had soiled myself. It's funny now, but it was scary then. But having that talk, especially with your male children, is one of the key things that we've all had to do. And sometimes when our kids look at us, they say, "Oh, come on, Dad. Oh, come on." If you don't, you put them in danger.
We got a young lady up front that's been holding up her hands for quite a while.
My question is based on something one of you said, that you wanted to go to DC to join the march, but you couldn't. And most of us are too young to vote or have much of an influence on legislation. So I was wondering what we could do as teens, as young people right now to combat racism.
That's a great question. I think I'll take it. I'll start off with it. It starts in your home. We are creatures that learn everything. Most of what we learn in our formative years, we learn from our parents, our grandparents. You know, when a little baby, a little boy, a little girl comes up and calls me nigger, they learned that somewhere. That they weren't born with those qualities. So start out by having a conversation with your parents. And when they do something that you feel uncomfortable with, call them on it. I mean, you can diplomatically call them on it. You can say, hey, Pop, hey, Mom, what's up with that? Hey, Grandpa, what do you mean calling those people the N-word? Have a courageous conversation with them. That's where it starts. You might take some heat for it, but you want to have that conversation. That's when it starts, even before you get the opportunity to vote. But have those courageous conversations. You know, have it with your friends. You know, these young hip hop artists they want to go nigga this, nigga that. You have no idea what that word means. You have none. When you've seen your daddy be called a nigger and he is defenseless, he can't do anything to defend his honor. That's when it cuts you to the core. You stand there with tears in your eyes and you see your dad tremble and he's crying because he's so frustrated. He can't do a damn thing. So if you want to be cool with me and you're going to jump up to me and say, hey, what's going on, nigga this? I will take you outside and I will smack you down, okay? You hear me? You and me will be in big trouble.
Yeah. Great, there's one right here. Where? Right there. You can stand up? Yeah.
What was the coolest thing when it changed? What was like the best thing that happened? Like, oh my goodness, this is crazy that I can actually do this. Like, what was the coolest thing you could do? Like, oh, I can't believe it. I can actually go to a store and put on a pair of shoes and not get chewed up about it. Or something like that.
Yeah.
I need one.
Well, you know, what was the coolest thing for me? I don't know. The coolest thing for me just recently happened was when Barack Obama was elected president. I cried. I cried and cried. And as I think about it now, I still want to cry. I get choked up about it because I couldn't believe that finally, you know, one of us had gotten to that point. You know, there were some cool moments in life, but that was a significant emotional event for me. Let me just stop there.
Any other questions? Because we all don't have to answer.
Yeah, I've had a question for a little bit. Since you are a little bit older than we are, you've seen a lot more than we have. What are some quick words of advice that you can see, like, our generation in making some of the mistakes that we have, and like some solutions that you can see that we may not, because we're a little younger? So I don't know. That sounds really
Test. I just said openness. Be open. We all, because of the way we were raised, and I keep hitting this thing because I think it's important, we all have some biases. We all have some prejudices. Be open to talking to someone about it. Be willing to understand the other person's situation. Go through an exercise that I do in my trainings called listening to understand. Let someone tell you why they feel that way without you responding. And then repeat back to the other person what you thought you heard them say. And when they say you got it, you just reverse roles, you see. So that's listening to understand. And then when you understand, face that up against objective reality and be willing to change your thinking and act differently. doing things differently as a result of seeing things differently. Okay?
Hello. Over here. So, I was wondering, how long do you think institutional racism will be alive in America?
That's an interesting question. I think as long as America is America, as long as the world is the world, as long as we have human beings, we will have disagreements. Now, it doesn't have to be to the degree that it is right now, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. I just think that we have to learn to manage our lives and manage our businesses and manage everything based on an individual's ability to do the job. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. Somebody else might want to.
I just want to say this. Have hope. I think that I did a little research on Apple Valley, and I understand that you all, as diverse as you are, you get along very well. Something's happening here, and I would say continue to have hope, continue to be open, continue to understand each other and get to know each other. That's the hope to make things better. The other thing that really impresses me is that when I see a rally today, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, but the recognition of Black Lives Matter, when I see those folks marching, when I see them doing something, there are more than black people. There are as many white people and Hispanic people and Somali people in some of those things than there are black people. That's beautiful. That's what I want to see more of. That will change things.
Just 10 seconds on that. In the human race, there's a such thing called a pecking order. And I don't care how long you live or whatever, that pecking order is going to be there. If it's not a black-white thing, it's a Jewish-Palestinian thing, you know. If it's not that, it's blue eyes, brown eyes. You know, or it's light-skinned blacks versus dark-skinned. So those kind of racism, those kind of things will continue forever. The big thing for me, for you to do, is to educate yourself. Racism is a result of ignorance and fear. If you educate yourself, get outside of that fear, then you can make a change.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left, so I don't know if you want final thoughts or additional questions. What would you prefer?
The young lady in pink here.
Yep.
I'd rather than have questions.
All right.
Summarize it.
So if you had the knowledge that you had now, if you had the opportunity to go back to when you were younger, knowing what you know now, would you take the opportunity? And if so, what would you do differently?
You know, I was trained as a teacher, and I abdicated my responsibility. I always felt that I was a better teacher than anything else. I went for the money. I made a lot more money in the business world than I would have teaching. But I think I would go back and have a teaching career because all of my heroes and sheroes were educators. Everything that I am, everything that I stand for, I got from my teachers. And I want to take a moment just to commend the administration and the teaching staff here at Apple Valley High School for putting on a symposium like this, where you as sophomores can come and you can really start to get a handle on some of the more difficult issues facing our country. But I think that you've made a good start. And I think I would just say, talk more, read more, get out of that comfort shell. That's what I would do. I tried to meet as many different people that were different than me and find out what their perspective was on it. Like Mr. Robinson said, you know, what's up? How do you feel? You know, meet you, find out why you wear the hijab. You know, when people ask you that, or what are your beliefs on this? You know, how do you feel about this? Get at the core of what people's feelings are, because feelings do exist, and we shouldn't blow them off.
Find a mentor. You don't have to reinvent the wheel today. Find somebody and ask them, would you mentor me? Somebody that you know and trust. Doesn't have to be a teacher. In my case, it was a couple of teachers. People that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and instead of having power over me, they empowered me. Instead of having control over me, they freed me up to be all that I can be. And instead of me serving them, they end up serving me. Find someone like that can support you through these things and these times. And right now is the time to start doing that.
I think your question was, what would, if there's anything I would do differently? Is that it? Quite honestly, I would say that no, there's nothing that I would do differently. I think life is a journey. It's crossroads. You have to be vigilant. You have to, when you reach a crossroad, you have to stop and think, should I go right? Should I go left? The decisions you make, every decision you make in your life is going to affect you somewhere down the line. I think I did a good job of that. My mother would say that I did an excellent job. She's very proud of me. I was the first in my family to ever go to college. So she's very proud. So no, I wouldn't change a thing. I think my judgment and my decision making was good.
That's a good question, because I think about it often. My degree is in education, and I taught middle school for 2 years, opted out for the money. And if I were to do it again, knowing what I know today, I probably would have spent my time in education as a teacher, simply because the impact that you can have on young people's lives, you know when they get it, you know when they don't, just by looking in their faces. You know, with my job, I had to make the numbers. Being all of us in sales, I made the numbers. Once I made the numbers, thank you, what have you done for me lately? But when I, as a teacher, and I'm on Facebook, a lot of my 8th grade students are now on Facebook with me. And they talk in terms of what happened during those days that I taught them as a teacher. And that makes you proud, that you know that you made an impact on others' lives. However, everything that I am today is a result of everything that I went through to get here. And so part of my semi-retirement effort is semi-education, training and developing people. Many of them are in the corporate world, but helping them to be the best that they can be. So I've kind of returned to my roots.
I just want to add one thing to that. I just want to add one thing, because I know we run out of time. And it's interesting, of all the educators here, I also was a teacher. And I don't know if I left for the money, but I left. But the important thing for me at this point, I work over at Hopkins High School. I just work as a paraprofessional. I didn't want to be a substitute. I wanted to be at that school. My life journey, after leaving education, has allowed me to be a better mentor and helping the kids that I talk to now. I have a group at Hopkins High School of 25 African American sophomore boys. The group is called the Invictus Leadership Group. And we meet and we talk about issues. So, you know, that's what I mean. I wouldn't change a thing, because now I'm a little more worldly than I was when I was just a teacher. I've got some experience that I can give back to them. So anyway, that's it. I don't know, I think we've run out of time.
Yeah, please give them one more hand. And you are dismissed to your fourth hour.